Brian Cram here. This is a quick tour of how to upgrade D3 Windows to 10.3.1 from a prior version. Having said that, upgrade is kind of a misnomer in this case, since the 10.3.1 installer won't upgrade a prior release in place, so the steps are more like a migration than an upgrade. So you're really getting two topics for the price of one. And I'm doing this as a PowerPoint with screenshots rather than a live demo in order to keep this short. Before we begin, let's get an overview of the steps you'll be taking. Before the install, you want to get a verified file save. If you're going to be installing on a different server than the one currently running, you need to drag that file save over to that server. On the other hand, if you're upgrading D3 on the currently running server, you'll need to uninstall D3 using the complete removal option. At this point, you'll install D3. After that, you'll configure some settings, restore your data, perform some compilation and upgrade steps, and restore any changes you've made to our system accounts and files. So let's get started. We'll start with the verified file save. First, log on to the DM account and at TCL do the following. Set device to select the tape file, T-rewind to position the tape at the beginning, file save, answering no to everything except answering yes to verify. When the file save completes, you'll be logged off. Log back onto DM and do a which CAD and make note of your system ID as you'll need it later. If you're installing D3 on the currently running server, you now need to shut down D3 and uninstall it. Open the control panel, click on Programs and Features, and see if there's a D3 service pack installed. If so, uninstall this first. Double-click on the service pack, then navigate the prompts. If other users are logged on, click Continue. Same with the UAC dialog, click Yes. And yes, you're going to want to uninstall the service pack. And you also want to automatically close any open applications like the License Manager and ODBC server. The service pack will then take a couple of minutes to be removed. Refresh the Programs and Features dialog and you'll see the service pack is gone. Now it's time to completely remove D3. Double-click on D3 Windows, then navigate the prompts. If other users are logged on, click Yes to continue. Click Next to start the uninstall. Click the Remove Radio button and Next. Click the All Data and Programs button and Next. You are sure you want to remove everything, so click Yes. Again with the UAC dialog, click Yes. Again with the Automatically Close dialog, click Yes. The uninstall will take a few minutes and then present you with the Install Shield Wizard Completed dialog. Click Finish. Refresh the Programs and Features dialog and you'll see that D3 Windows is gone. If you're installing D3 on a separate server, time to drag the file save from the current box to the new box. So now we're ready to install D3 10.3.1. Open the Windows directory where you put the installer. Notice the naming convention has changed ever so slightly. On prior releases, you had an s.exe and a c.exe. The S installed the server on the main D3 server, where the C installed the D3 client piece on other Windows boxes so that utilities like the File Manager and D3 TCL could be run from multiple computers. As of 10.3.1, the server and client installers are combined, so you'll be looking for a file called 10.3.1.exe, not 10.3.1s.exe. So, double-click the installer, click Yes to allow the app to make changes, click Accept Radio button and Next. You are now given the option to change the install directories. To change any of them, click Change, alter the folder name and click OK, and click Next. I usually recommend only changing the drive letter and leaving the path alone, as it's easier for support to find stuff when you call in, but that's entirely up to you. I do highly recommend that you do not simply provide a drive letter, as it can confuse D3 to run out of a root directory. I also recommend that you leave the programs on C and move only the virtual and database to the other drive. In this presentation, we're going to be doing a typical install, which installs all features except for host authentication, pretty much what you want. But now would be a good time to dive deeper into the concept of the single installer for both server and client. So, click the Custom Radio button and Next. You're now presented with the Custom Setup dialog. Notice that all of the client and server features are shown. you can collapse and expand client and server, as well as collapse and expand the components. For example, in the client session, you can expand MVSP and change the Java option from features and subfeatures installed to feature not available. Down in the server section, you can select to install host authentication or unselect the FSI server if you're configuring a multi-VME situation for load balancing. And by the way, please don't do that without calling us first, unless you're one of the very few D3 shops that have done this. Okay, as I said before in this presentation, we're going to be doing a typical install. So click Next on the Service Installation dialog. Then review your settings and click Install. When it finally gets there, click OK to activate. Click OK to acknowledge that you need to enter a system ID. Enter the system ID, which is displayed on the previously captured which CAD. Enter an email address associated with that system ID. You should have received a temporary activation, so note the expiry date and press Exit. At the completed dialog, click Finish. Look in the Windows Service Control Manager and verify that you have the D3 VME and D3 ODBC server installed and running. The base install is now complete. By the way, this should give you 2 weeks to complete testing and migration. If for some reason you got a permanent activation, that's okay. Usually means your current system is really old and hasn't been activated in years. Just let us know and we can help you decommission that old server at a later date. Okay, now that D3 is installed and activated, you need to shut down D3 and use the device manager to adjust D3's configuration to match your existing system. Click the device manager in the Rocket D3 program group. Click Yes to allow changes. There are several tabs in the device manager. We'll cover the ones where common changes are made. First, we'll add a pseudo tape file. Click the VME Tape Devices tab. Click Add Tape. In the Available Tape dropdown, click Pseudo Tape. Click Select to get to the File Explorer. Navigate to the directory containing your tapes. Click the tape you wish to add and click Open. If it doesn't exist but you want it created there, simply type the file name in the text box and click Open. Click OK to confirm your selection. And if the tape is already existed, click Yes to use the existing file. Next, we'll change the Telnet timeout settings. Click the D3 Connects tab. Click the Telnet Logon Timeout checkbox if not already checked. Enter the number of seconds times 10 in the timeout text box. Example, 5 minutes is 300 seconds or 3,000 deciseconds. Put 3,000 in the box. Click Update. Next, we'll change the number of PIBs and VME size. Click the D3 Settings tab. Click the Increase Total Number of PIBs checkbox. Change the PIBs and phantoms to the appropriate numbers. Please note that if either number was increased, that you'll need to do a VME restore. At some point, a warning dialog to that effect will pop up. Click Yes to acknowledge. Make the appropriate entry in the new disk size text box. Click Update, then click Exit. Again, there are other options in there, like you can add more tapes, add direct printers, configure the workstation, other stuff. But what we've shown here will get you going. Now it's time to customize D3 VMEs and ODB services in the Windows Service Control Manager. This is when and where you should change the current user under which D3 runs, maybe set the services to manual or whatever. In this example, we'll disable the D3 ODBC service. Launch the Service Control Manager, right-click the ODBC server, click Properties. On the General tab, click the Startup Type dropdown and select Disabled. Press OK to save that change. Time to start D3 again and do the data restore. Right-click on the D3 VME service and click Start. Log on to DM. Do a set device of the appropriate tape. Do a T-rewind. Do a restore accounts and wait for the restore to complete. Answer no to the restore from incremental question. Answer no to the restore from transaction log question. After the main data restore, restore any custom MDS items like those legacy user account queue pointers. Do a T-rewind. Do cell restore MDS with an N option. Answer F to restore from a full save tape. Answer 2 to restore from the file number 2, which is the MDS. When that's done, do a T-rewind. If you have customized the logon screen, you can cell restore MDS logon with an O option to overwrite. Answer F to restore from a full save tape. Answer 2 to restore from file number 2, which is the MDS. When that's done, do a T rewind. Now it's time to restore the user file items. Do a T rewind and do a cell restore users with an IZ option. The I option suppresses display of the items being restored. The Z option suppresses those stupid restore from incremental and transaction log questions. Answer F to restore from a full save tape. Account name on tape is FSIDM. The file name is users. And when that's done, do a T rewind. Now it's time to restore the old DM account. If you need to, you can repeat this step for the old SQL account if you're using ODBC. Just don't T detach until you're done restoring copies of both accounts. Do a T rewind. Do account restore dm.old. Account name on tape is DM. When it's done, answer no to the incremental and transaction log questions, unless you were smart enough to use the Z option. When that's done, do a T rewind. When you finish the last account, do a T detach. Now it's time to reflash all of the Flash compiled programs in the system. This is necessary because of changes to Flash Basics architecture. You don't need source code to do this step. Do flash.compile.all with the OW options. The O option specifies to Flash, and the W option skips the compilation of source code to pick pseudocode. When prompted for the account, enter all. This one will crank for a while, so go refill your coffee. When it's done, you'll be at TCL. Now it's time to do the NT upgrade step. From TCL in the DM account, copy DOS:/. NT_upgrade with an O option. At the to prompt, enter left paren MD. Enter NT upgrade. Press C at the continue with upgrade prompt and press C at the insert data files prompt. After a few minutes, press Y at the rerun system cold start prompt. When it's done, you'll be at a D3 logon prompt. So now you want to shut down and restart D3 for a sanity check. Log on to DM and do shut down with the Y option. Start the D3 VME service in services. If you're using ODBC, start that service too. Okay, now comes the fun part. Depending on how much you've modified our stuff, this could be as simple as copying over your user cold start or as complicated as copying in queue pointers, BP catalogs, and remodifying our utilities because somebody didn't like how we built them. Let's look at this file by file, starting with the DM account in the VME. The DM account MD usually contains a user cold start, maybe catalog BPs to run automatic file saves and the like. Select the MD of the DM old account, then select the MD of the new DM account, and you'll have a list of what's missing, and you can deal with it appropriately. The backgrounds file is used to start phantoms on a scheduled basis, basically cron for D3. Copy them over. BP, this is D3's basic utilities. It should not, but may, contain any of your programs or changes to ours. If you did change them, copy and compile the changes. The clashes file. This is where updateMD stores anything it overwrote that you might need to recover. I wouldn't copy anything over from the old account, but I would take a look at the new account to see what you had in place that the NT upgrade may have sullied. The devices file. This is used to store terminal emulator and printer control sequences. It's likely that changes have been made, especially in the laser or WinGDI printer area. And you'll need to look for differences and selectively copy with an override option. The file of files. This is the D3 VME's file statistics file. It should only have been altered if you're configuring clear file logging on a file-by-file basis, which is not very likely. If you did deal with clear file logging on a file level, you'll need to apply those changes again by hand, not by copying, as the FOF numbers would have changed. The host file stores all OSFI drivers used by D3 to read from or write to OS files, D3 to D3 communication as configured by the network setup utility, and/or OpenDB server configuration. Likely that changes have been made, and you'll need to copy the missing and altered host items from the old account to the new one. You may need to remove the T4 from attribute 3 of the drive letter host items to avoid space to tab substitution on OSFI writes to the OS. Jobs file. This stores information about running, completed, and aborted phantoms. I cannot think of any reason to copy this over. Anything you need would have been handled by the background's file copy or the application itself. The messages file. This contains messaging text like the 401 file not found and stuff like that. Also contains Flash Connect activation and messages, so you should copy from the old to the new file without overwrite. The NUAC file, used by UpdateMD to update an old VME MD entry with the new one, contains implementation-specific data levels as well as the generic data level applied to all platforms. It should not, but may have been altered, especially if you have altered our utilities or added options to commands, like adding the O option in Attribute 6 of the compile command. The PIBs file. This contains information about the current PIB, term type, user, etc., and is updated by the system. Some legacy applications read this file to set terminal characteristics, so if your application misbehaves from a display standpoint, you may need to copy these over. The pointer file contains all of your saved lists. Should not need to be restored, but may need to be restored if some idiot is using it as a data file for program control. And don't laugh, because someone actually did that. The TCL stack stores a user's TCL commands. It's read by the .stack commands and the Control-D TCL stack processor. Wouldn't hurt to copy it over. Now let's look at this file by file in the FSIDM account. The basic programs file is just like the BP file in the VME. These are D3's utilities. They should not, but may, contain any of your programs and or changes to ours. If you did change them, copy and compile the changes. File of files. This is the FSI's version of the file statistics file. It should only have been altered if configuring clear file logging on a file-by-file basis. Like the VME version, if you altered it, make the changes again by hand, not by copying as the FOF numbers would have changed. The host file. This is a mirror image of the host file on the VME, updated by a collex on the VME's host file. Absolutely no reason to copy this one over, as the copy of the VME version would have been updated by the collex. The messages file. This is the FSI version of the same file in the VME that contains messaging text like the 401 file not found. It also contains Flash Connect activation and messages, so you should copy from the old to the new without overwrite. The NUAC is used by UpdateMD to update an old FSI MD entry with the new one. It's just like the VME version and should be updated for the same reasons. The users file is the D3 Windows version of the DM users file. We already restored this guy in a previous step, so you're done with this one. One file to deal with in the SQL account. This is the tables file. It stores D3 file to SQL table mapping information. This will certainly have been modified if you are accessing D3 via SQL through the D3 ODBC server, and should be copied without overwrite. Okay, we're done. Typically, this process will be done twice, once as a trial run and once for real. So if this was your trial run, time to test your application on this new platform. Test it until you're blue in the face. The more you test, the easier your go live will be. Thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful.